My mom's delivery van was surrounded by furious residents, cops, and one unbothered woman in a white Lexus sipping iced coffee. Just an hour earlier, she'd been doing her usual route, humming along to old disco hits and dropping off medications to elderly people in the gated community. Now she was nearly in tears, her van blocked at the front gate by an HOA president who decided she didn't look authorized enough. The reason this woman stopped her? My mom wasn't wearing a name badge. That's all it took. What this Karen didn't know was that my mom delivered critical medication to dozens of their elderly residents, and at that very moment, a man inside the community was seizing on his kitchen floor while his wife screamed into the phone that his meds were in my mom's van. I watched it all unfold over video call, my mom's phone balanced on the dashboard, and I could hear the HOA lady shouting something about rules being rules, while residents behind her banged their canes and fists on her car. My jaw dropped. That was the moment I closed my laptop, grabbed my keys, and promised myself this would not end the way Karen thought it would. It started like every ordinary Tuesday. Mom had picked up her batch of deliveries from the pharmacy warehouse at 6 a.m. sharp, as usual. She was a part-time delivery driver for a specialized medication service, something she'd taken up after retiring from teaching. She loved it, not just the driving but the relationships she built. Most of her clients were elderly, some homebound, and she was the only person they saw all week. She kept a little folder of handwritten thank you notes from them in her glove box. She even carried extra dog biscuits for the yappy little poodles at one resident's door. She was, in short, the kind of person who made the world a bit softer for those who needed it. Around 10:15 a.m., she approached the entrance of a large HOA-controlled neighborhood called Silver Pines. It was one of her major stops, about 12 deliveries just in that one gated area. Normally, the guard let her in without a hitch. They'd seen her every week for nearly 2 years. But this time, there was a new gatekeeper. Not the security guard. No, this was Monica Bent, the HOA president, known throughout the community for treating her unpaid position like a military command. She had apparently shown up that morning to audit gate entries, clipboard in hand, barking orders like she was running a prison. When Mom rolled down her window and smiled, Monica, gave her a once-over and frowned. "Identification," she snapped. Mom blinked, caught off guard. "I'm the medication courier I've been here every week for." Monica cut her off. "You're not on the official guest list. No badge. No access. You'll have to turn around." Then, like it was nothing, she pulled forward and parked her white Lexus horizontally across the entrance, physically blocking the gate. Mom was stunned. She tried to explain. She pointed to the printed delivery route, even showed her cooler box labeled with the pharmacy's logo, but Monica refused to look. "You could be anyone. That van isn't marked. We don't allow random vehicles." Mom didn't know what to do, so she called me. I answered, a little amused at first, thinking this was just another annoying HOA encounter. But then I heard the tone of her voice. Stressed. Nervous. Her voice cracked when she said, "I think I'm going to have to skip them today. I don't want any trouble." That's when her phone buzzed. And then again. And again. I could hear each new voicemail arriving as she sat there, trapped behind the Lexus blockade. The one that broke us both was a live call from Mrs. Garvey, a woman in her 80s whose husband had severe epilepsy. "He needs his medication. He's already showing signs. Please tell me you're on your way." At that exact moment, my blood ran cold. I yelled for my mom not to move, told her I was coming, and hung up. I ran out of my apartment, didn't even change out of my hoodie and sandals. I was halfway there when she called again, saying someone had phoned the police because Monica still refused to move her car. A literal traffic jam of elderly residents had formed behind the gate. Some had driven out for errands and now couldn't re-enter. One man even tried to reverse over a curb to sneak in through the exit gate, but his bumper scraped the pavement and cracked. The whole scene was unraveling into absurdity. By the time I arrived, there were 2 patrol cars and a whole sidewalk full of angry retirees holding phones, waving papers, shouting at Monica to move her car. My mom stood awkwardly beside her van, clutching her clipboard and trying not to cry. One woman had come out with her oxygen tank and was yelling that she'd missed 2 doses because of this power-hungry lunatic. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Monica, still somehow calm, pointed at me and said, "You can't film here. This is private property." I ignored her. The officer, Sergeant Flores, stepped forward. The moment he saw my mom, his face changed. "Miss Diane? My dad's Mr. Flores, on your delivery list. He told me you bring his blood pressure meds every week." Monica opened her mouth to object, but Flores raised a hand. "This woman is not a threat. She's medically authorized and cleared. You've detained her, delayed medications to over a dozen vulnerable seniors, and refused to comply with multiple warnings. This isn't an HOA matter anymore. This is obstruction." Monica's jaw dropped. I think in that second she finally understood the gravity of what she'd done. But it was too late. Damage had been done. Residents were still calling, still waiting, and Diane had now missed 3 other community stops. We drove away with Flores' card in hand and a stack of furious residents behind us. Mom didn't speak the whole way home. She looked tired, defeated. I looked at her and thought, how many years of goodwill had she built that were just wiped out in one morning by one petty woman with a clipboard and too much free time? And then I made a decision. Karen might have blocked a van today, but I was about to bulldoze her entire HOA throne. The next morning began with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the heavy, uncomfortable kind that follows a storm that hasn't quite finished. My mom sat at the kitchen table, staring into her coffee. It had gone cold. She hadn't slept well, and neither had I. Her phone buzzed once again, and she didn't move to check it. I leaned over and saw a missed call from Dr. Ramirez, her supervisor at the pharmacy distribution center. My heart dropped. This wasn't a friendly call. This was about damage control. I picked up the phone and handed it to her. She shook her head. I answered it for her. Dr. Ramirez didn't yell, but the disappointment in his voice was sharp. He explained that they had already received 5 complaints from residents about missed or delayed medication. Some had written emails directly to the corporate office. Even though Flores had written up an official statement for the incident, corporate wasn't happy. The HOA was spinning the story. According to their version, my mom had refused to provide ID and had become aggressive. Monica had already sent a long, self-congratulatory email to residents titled, "Protecting Our Community: What Really Happened at the Gate." I got my hands on it through one of the residents. It read like a PR stunt mixed with delusion. She claimed she'd saved the community from a potential security breach. She even had the nerve to say that the woman in the unmarked van became verbally hostile and refused to comply with safety protocols. She didn't mention the dozens of people who had missed vital meds or the man who had collapsed from his seizure that morning. Dr. Ramirez was torn. He knew Diane wasn't at fault, but pressure from above meant he had to suspend her Silver Pines route until they sorted things out. She wasn't fired, but she was essentially benched. My mom nodded slowly, thanked him, and hung up. Then she walked to the sink and poured out her coffee without a word. That silence hit harder than anything. I knew then that if we didn't fight back, Monica would win. I spent the rest of the day talking to residents. I drove back to Silver Pines, parked outside the gate, and waited for someone to buzz me in. When Mr. Delaney, a retired schoolteacher, came out to check his mail, I waved him down. He remembered me from the incident. "That woman doesn't care about us," he said bluntly, leaning on his cane. "She cares about being in charge." I told him what happened with my mom's job. He frowned deeply. Then he invited me in. Inside his home, he introduced me to his wife Margaret and showed me a drawer full of papers. Complaint forms, HOA newsletters, and emails. He wasn't the only one keeping record. Margaret had a folder labeled Monica Watt. Apparently, this wasn't the first time Monica had pulled something like this. There was an incident last summer where she had shut off a small community food pantry project, saying the boxes on porches were unsightly. Another time, she forced a family to remove a wheelchair-accessible ramp because it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic. The family had moved away shortly after. And now this. That night I created a shared Google folder and started organizing everything. I titled it HOA Transparency Project. I sent the link to Mr. Delaney, who promised to discreetly share it with his neighbors. Within 2 days, over 30 files had been uploaded. Photos, testimonies, video clips, even a few recorded HOA meetings where Monica had steamrolled any dissent. There was one particularly telling clip where she literally muted a Zoom call when a resident asked why community funds were being spent on re-landscaping the area in front of her home while the clubhouse roof still leaked. I drafted a formal petition for her removal as HOA president. According to the bylaws, we needed 67% of the residents to sign in order to force a vote. I wasn't even a resident, but I had the help of many who were. Mr. Dominguez, a veteran with Parkinson's who depended on my mom's deliveries, offered to go door to door with his daughter. The Garveys shared their own story about the seizure incident. Stories poured in. I heard about a woman fined for hanging a wind chime that made too much noise. A man penalized for leaving his garage door open too long. A gardener who was banned because Monica didn't like the color of his truck. At first, I thought maybe Monica was just power-hungry. But when I dug deeper, I found something that shifted everything. In the HOA's most recent budget report, there were a few odd entries. Nearly $10,000 marked as beautification projects, but no breakdown of how the funds were used. One of the listed projects was a new brick path, connecting common space. I drove around looking for it. The only new path I found led from Monica's back gate to the clubhouse, an area she'd once claimed she never used. Suspicious didn't even begin to cover it. I called a friend of mine who worked in City Record. She helped me file a public records request for vendor payments related to the Silver Pines HOA. It took a few days, but when the documents arrived, they confirmed my suspicion. The landscaping company hired for most of the community upgrades was owned by Monica's cousin, and the rates they charged were wildly inflated. That was it. It wasn't just micromanagement anymore. It was mismanagement, possibly even embezzlement. I brought all of this to Officer Flores. He agreed to take a closer look. Meanwhile, the petition had reached nearly 80% of resident support. We set a date for a community town hall. Monica, sensing the shift in tides, began posting frantic updates on the HOA bulletin board about outside agitators and false allegations. But it was too late. The residents had seen the truth. My mom watched all this from the sidelines, still stunned by how fast things were moving. She had never asked for revenge. She just wanted to do her job and help people. But now the people she'd helped were standing up for her. It wasn't just about her job anymore. It was about how one person with too much power could bully an entire community, until that community decided enough was enough. As we printed out the final copy of the petition to deliver to the HOA legal liaison, my mom reached over and squeezed my hand. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. That quiet, powerful gesture said everything. We were in this fight and we weren't backing down. The energy in Silver Pines shifted in ways I hadn't expected. In less than a week, what started as one act of petty control turned into a full-blown movement. The residents had gone from fearful compliance to quiet rebellion. Monica, once untouchable, was now the subject of whispered jokes and open complaints. Yard signs started appearing that read "Remove the Queen" in stenciled red paint. One resident even painted a chess piece on his driveway with the words "Checkmate" coming. Despite Monica's desperate attempts to regain control, she was clearly losing her grip. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. The financial documents I'd uncovered weren't just suspicious, They were potentially criminal. I knew that if we wanted lasting change, we needed more than just a community vote. We needed the truth exposed where it couldn't be ignored. I started compiling a detailed report, including screenshots, payment logs, vendor addresses, and the inflated costs tied to Monica's cousin's business. My friend from City Records verified that the company listed hadn't been properly licensed for 3 years. Even more damning, the invoices submitted to the HOA listed services that had never been performed. One invoice claimed a tree removal job worth $4,000. When I checked the address, not only were there no trees missing, the resident confirmed no one had ever been to their property for landscaping. That was the evidence I needed. I reached out to a local investigative reporter named Rebecca Shaw, known for her work exposing HOA corruption in another county. I sent her the full folder anonymously, hoping it would be enough to get her attention. She responded within hours. She was in. Meanwhile, Monica tried to turn the tables. She held an emergency HOA board meeting and sent out notices filled with legal jargon threatening defamation lawsuits and removal of board privileges. She accused the community of being manipulated by outsiders. She referenced me several times without naming me, calling me the instigator behind what she called a misinformation campaign. But the residents weren't buying it. When she attempted to hold a meeting to clear her name, less than 10 people showed up, and 5 of them only came to confront her. One man stood up and read out his mother's emergency room bill after missing her blood pressure meds that day. Another woman said her son, a disabled vet, had to be rescheduled for treatment because the van couldn't deliver his anxiety meds. Monica tried to wave them off, claiming she had followed protocol. But nobody wanted to hear about protocol anymore. They wanted accountability. On the day Rebecca arrived to conduct interviews, I met her outside the community gate. She was sharp, quick-witted, and clearly experienced dealing with people like Monica. We walked the neighborhood together as she interviewed residents, recording stories that painted a consistent picture of abuse of power, mismanagement, and intimidation. She spent over 2 hours with my mom, who explained the entire incident from her perspective. Rebecca was particularly moved when Diane pulled out a stack of cards from the residents, thank yous, get well soon notes, even one with a hand-drawn van that said our hero. After Rebecca left, I noticed my mom smiling for the first time in days. Something had lifted. Things escalated quickly after that. Monica must have found out about the reporter because the very next day, she started issuing random violation notices. Overgrown grass, mismatched curtains, improperly stored trash cans, anything she could dig up. It was a last-ditch attempt to scare people back into silence, but it only fueled the fire. One resident, fed up with the nonsense, held a barbecue in his front yard with a massive sign that said "Find me." The entire cul-de-sac showed up. That same night, someone spray-painted Phony Queen on Monica's white Lexus. I didn't condone the vandalism, but I understood the rage. Then came the unexpected twist that changed everything. As I was reviewing the HOA's older public reports, I noticed a discrepancy in the insurance policy expenditures. One particular entry listed a premium for a liability policy that didn't exist the previous year. I traced it to a broker that, oddly enough, shared a business address with a company Monica previously managed. On paper, the two companies weren't connected, but the names on the filings were eerily similar. I called Flores and explained what I'd found. He promised to bring it to a friend at the Inspector General's office. 2 days later, a black SUV with county plates pulled up outside Monica's home. A woman in a gray suit got out, flanked by 2 others. They knocked on the door, clipboard in hand. I watched from a distance as Monica opened the door, still in her robe, and exchanged words. Her expression went from confused to defensive to furious in less than 30 seconds. She tried to slam the door, but one of the agents blocked it with their foot. It was happening. The audit was real. Someone from the county was officially looking into the HOA's book. Word spread fast. Monica tried to act like it was just a misunderstanding, but the residents weren't listening anymore. They started openly questioning her authority, pushing back on every email, every notice, every HOA decision. One resident organized a protest in front of the community clubhouse with signs that read, "Where are our dues really going, and deliver our meds, not excuses." My mom was invited to speak, and while she was hesitant at first, she stood before the crowd and told her story. Her voice wavered but never cracked. She talked about responsibility, about what it means to serve others, and about how no one should be punished for doing the right thing. When she finished, the applause was overwhelming. Even the grumpiest residents had tears in their eyes. That same evening, the HOA petition signatures crossed 90%. It was more than enough. Monica would have to face a formal vote. She tried to stall it with claims of technical errors in the petition process, but the board wasn't listening anymore. Two of her closest allies had resigned quietly, leaving her alone to face the music. The countdown to the vote had begun, and Monica was spiraling. She posted bizarre updates, filmed videos defending herself, and even accused me of hacking into HOA emails, a ridiculous claim that Flores laughed off. But what really sealed it was the story that aired on the local news. Rebecca's report hit like a sledgehammer. The piece opened with footage of the blocked delivery van and featured interviews with residents, financial experts, and even a city official commenting on the irregularities in HOA spending. Monica's face appeared on screen for a total of 10 seconds, all of them unflattering. Her shrill voice, saying "I don't care what's in the van," became an instant meme. Comments flooded in online. Strangers from other communities started sharing their own HOA horror stories. My mom's quiet courage became a symbol for something much bigger. I sat beside her as the report ended, both of us stunned by how far things had come. She looked at me and said softly, "I just wanted to bring people their medicine." I smiled and replied, "And now you're helping them heal in ways they never expected." We didn't know what the final vote would bring, but one thing was clear. Monica's days of unchecked power were numbered, and the community she once ruled with fear had finally remembered its voice. The day of the vote arrived like a quiet storm, with the kind of tension you could feel in the air even before a single word was spoken. It wasn't a formal election by government standards, but to the residents of Silver Pines, it felt like one. Flyers had gone out. Folding chairs were set up outside the community clubhouse. A portable microphone crackled in the breeze. People who hadn't left their homes in weeks now shuffled out with walkers and canes to attend. There were even some lawn chairs set up in the grass under umbrellas. It wasn't just a vote about Monica anymore, it had become a referendum on the culture of fear, silence, and control she had instilled over the years. The HOA board, now with 2 new interim members, tried to keep things civil. But the crowd was done being quiet. My mom didn't want to go at first. She said she didn't need to see it play out. But something changed her mind that morning. Maybe it was the bouquet of flowers she got from one of the residents. Maybe it was the thank you voicemail from the man who had the seizure the day Monica blocked the gate. Maybe it was just time. Either way, she stood beside me that afternoon, dressed in the same soft blue sweater she wore on her very first day of work with the pharmacy delivery service. She said it felt lucky. I said she didn't need luck. She had the truth. The crowd buzzed with whispers as Monica approached the makeshift podium. She wore a pressed white blouse, her signature sunglasses perched on her head like a crown, and that same clipboard clutched tightly in her hand like a shield. She looked tired, thinner maybe, and less confident than the woman who had once parked her Lexus sideways to block a medical courier. But she still had the voice. She cleared her throat and launched into a prepared statement. It was full of legal language and carefully curated phrases, claims about security protocols, references to bylaws, warnings about liability and structure. She never once apologized. She never once acknowledged the man who collapsed, the elderly woman who missed her heart meds, or my mom standing just a few feet away. She only talked about herself. When she finished, there was silence. Not applause, not boos, just an awkward, heavy pause. Then Mr. Delaney rose from the third row, paper in hand, and began to read. His voice trembled at first, but strengthened as he spoke. He read a personal account of what happened the day of the incident, how his wife had to go without medication for 3 days, and how Monica had dismissed their concerns as exaggeration. He ended with the simple words, "We deserve better." Then Margaret stood up beside him and handed the microphone to Mrs. Garvey, who shakily told the crowd how her husband nearly died waiting for the meds Monica had blocked. That broke the silence. More people began to rise. Mr. Dominguez stood from his wheelchair and pointed directly at Monica, saying, "You don't get to silence us anymore." The room didn't erupt, it simmered, anger mixing with long overdue courage. Then the vote began. Each resident stepped forward to mark a simple yes or no on the ballot. It was slow, respectful, and quiet. My mom watched, eyes misty but focused. She gripped my hand once when one of the residents walked by with a subtle nod of gratitude. When the last ballot was dropped in the box, the interim board took it into the clubhouse to count. Nobody left. They stayed right there in the heat, waiting together like it was a community vigil. While we waited, a silver sedan pulled up quietly. Out stepped the county audit investigator, clipboard in hand. She walked directly into the clubhouse without a word to Monica. That drew more whispers. Monica stood still, staring straight ahead, face stiff, refusing to look at anyone. Her hands trembled slightly around the clipboard. I wondered if it felt like a lifeline or a weapon now. 20 minutes later, the board returned. The lead board member stepped to the front and unfolded the results. He didn't drag it out. Monica Bent, by a vote of 92%, was removed from her position effective immediately. There was no cheering, no clapping, just a collective exhale, like a weight had finally been lifted. Monica didn't speak. She turned, walked off the stage, and left her clipboard on a nearby chair. It was the first time I had ever seen her retreat. In the days that followed, the HOA started cleaning house. The interim board initiated a full review of past budgets and contracts. The Cousins landscaping business was removed from the vendor list, pending legal review. The clubhouse's leaking roof was finally scheduled for repair. A new community vote was planned to elect a permanent president. And during that vote, Mr. Dominguez was nominated by nearly everyone. My mom's route was reinstated officially. Dr. Ramirez called her personally to apologize for the suspension. The pharmacy even issued a press release reaffirming their commitment to serving vulnerable communities. But the real moment of healing came when the residents themselves organized a surprise appreciation event. They called it the Heart of Silver Pines. My mom didn't want a big scene, but when she showed up and saw the crowd gathered around a table filled with homemade cards, baked goods, and a banner that said "Thank you, Diane," she couldn't hold back her tears. Officer Flores showed up too. He brought a framed copy of the original police report with the line noting that Diane had been wrongly detained. He had highlighted it and signed the bottom, saying, "You've got fans in the department now." Even the county audit investigator returned to thank Diane for her composure, noting that the audit had opened a wider review of HOA operations across several nearby communities. As for Monica, she disappeared for a while. Rumors floated around that she was trying to sue the HOA, but no one paid it much attention. She was seen once at a local coffee shop, sitting alone in a corner, typing on her laptop. Someone said she had taken a job writing grants for a private firm, but no one confirmed it. The important thing was that she no longer held the power to harm the people who had trusted her. One evening, a few weeks later, I sat with my mom on her porch as the sun dipped behind the rooftop. She was quiet, sipping tea, the weight of the past few weeks finally settling. I asked her if she ever imagined things would go this far. She smiled softly and said, "I just wanted to drop off medicine, not start a revolution. But sometimes doing the right thing makes noise. And maybe we needed a little noise to wake people up." The wind picked up slightly and rustled the trees. In the distance, I could see a group of neighbors laughing together near the clubhouse. The mood had changed. The fear was gone. And in its place there was something else. Unity. Resilience. And maybe, just maybe, peace. It was strange how quickly life in Silver Pines began to feel normal again, as if the storm had never happened. The tension that used to hang in the air like smoke was gone. People walked their dogs without glancing over their shoulders. Porch lights stayed on past 9. Neighbors who had barely exchanged greetings before were now organizing potlucks and movie nights in the community clubhouse. The air even felt lighter, as if the neighborhood had collectively exhaled for the first time in years. And in the middle of all this quiet rebuilding stood my mom, the very woman whose kindness had unknowingly sparked it all. She didn't wear it like a badge of honor, though. She still loaded her cooler with medication, kept to her schedule, and always carried extra dog treat. But now when she walked into the neighborhood, people came out to greet her. She wasn't just the delivery lady anymore. She was Diane. Maya from apartment 12 baked her a pie every Tuesday. Mr. Dominguez insisted on washing her van every other weekend. The Garveys invited her for Sunday lunch. These weren't just gestures of gratitude, they were signs of change. Signs that the neighborhood finally recognized what it had nearly lost. I watched all this unfold quietly, mostly staying in the background. But I knew this was only the surface. Below it all, deeper shifts had taken root. After Monica's removal, a community election was held. Mr. Dominguez was voted in as the new HOA president almost unanimously. His first action was to overhaul the neighborhood's gate policies. All medical and delivery services would now be issued permanent clearance, with no need for random approvals or gate battles. A community support committee was also formed, and my mom was asked to join. She declined at first, not wanting attention, but after some persuasion she agreed. Her condition was simple. She wouldn't sit on a stage, wouldn't wear a name badge, and wouldn't be part of any spotlight. She just wanted to help people. Then came something unexpected. One afternoon, a large white envelope arrived at our door. It was addressed to my mom, sealed with a county logo. Inside was a letter informing her that she had been nominated for the Community First Award, given annually by the Office of Public Affairs to citizens who had made an extraordinary contribution to public health or safety. It was signed by the county commissioner and included an invitation to a formal awards dinner. My mom laughed at first. She thought it was a mistake. I told her it was long overdue. The woman who once cried quietly in her van after being blocked by a Lexus was now being honored by the very county she served. We both went to the dinner, even though she tried to get out of it 3 times. I picked her dress, a simple dark green gown that brought out her warmth. She looked beautiful and nervous, and completely unprepared for what was coming. When her name was called, she walked up to the stage to a standing ovation. She didn't prepare a speech, but what she said brought half the room to tears. She spoke about the small things that matter. How kindness isn't flashy. How doing your job with dignity should be expected, not applauded. And how, sometimes, the people trying to make the biggest noise are the ones doing the least good. The commissioner handed her the plaque, and she clutched it with shaking hands, her eyes glossy under the bright lights. The next morning, photos from the event made it into the local newspaper. One headline read "Local Delivery Driver Honored for Saving Lives." Another called her the unlikely hero of Silver Pines. We framed one of the clippings and placed it near her front door, mostly because the neighbors kept asking to see it. She didn't brag. But she also didn't take it down. It was her quiet reminder that standing firm, even when you're scared, makes a difference. A few weeks after the awards dinner, something happened that caught me off guard. I had just pulled into a grocery store parking lot when I saw a familiar face unloading boxes into the pharmacy section. At first, I wasn't sure. The blonde hair was pulled back, the posture stiff, the sunglasses gone. But it was her. Monica. The woman who once stood like a barrier between my mother and her job now stood behind a counter, taping boxes marked medication delivery only. I didn't approach her. She didn't see me. But something about the moment struck me. Life has a strange way of rerouting people. Monica hadn't gone to jail. She hadn't disappeared. She was simply living another version of her life, one without a podium or clipboard. Just a job. Just another person. And maybe that was the real ending she needed. I went home and told my mom. She nodded once and said, "I hope she's kind to the next person she sees." No anger. No gloating. Just hope. That was her way. That same week, the residents held a second community event, this time to celebrate the new beginning under Mr. Dominguez's leadership. They invited everyone, and this time, even the former board members who had once sided with Monica showed up. There were no speeches, just food, laughter, and an atmosphere that felt free. My mom brought a box of cookies she had baked herself and handed them out from the back of her van. A little girl ran up to hug her. Someone handed her a card that simply read, "Thank you for staying." That night, as the lights around the clubhouse glowed and music played from a small Bluetooth speaker, I stood with my mom under the stars. She was laughing with some of the older residents, sipping lemonade, and smiling in a way I hadn't seen since before all this began. I realized then that the story wasn't just about one van or one block delivery. It was about what people can build when fear is replaced with trust, when silence is traded for voice, and when one woman, armed with nothing but dedication and a cooler of medications, decides that doing the right thing matters more than backing down. As the party wound down and people began to pack up, Mr. Dominguez handed my mom a small box. Inside was a gold-embossed community key and a note that read, "You didn't just deliver meds. You delivered hope." She closed the box with a quiet laugh and said, "They're going to make me cry again." But I saw it in her eyes. This time, the tears came from something lighter. Something beautiful. Something earned. And with that, the final delivery was complete.